Matrosskaya Tishina, the no-sound corridor rule. Before we dive in, you already know the deal. If you want more stories that peel back the darkest layers of real criminal secrets, hit subscribe, tap like, and drop a comment. Just don't make a sound while you do it. Silence is survival in this one. The first alarm didn't scream. It clicked, just a dry, mechanical snap that echoed down the concrete spine of Corridor 7B inside Moscow's most feared detention center, Matrosskaya Tishina. A corridor known among guards as the no-sound track, where high-profile detainees were kept under a rule so strict it bordered on psychological warfare. No speaking. No whispering. Not even the shuffle of unnecessary footsteps. At 2:14 a.m., a senior guard, Lieutenant Pavel Sidorov, found the silence broken, not by a voice, but by something far worse. A body lying halfway across the corridor floor, face down, motionless, its shadow stretching unnaturally long under the dim blue security lighting. The dead man wasn't a prisoner. He was one of their own. The CCTV feed from that night should have shown everything. But when investigators replayed the footage, all they saw were flickers, static, jumps, and frames missing entirely. Like someone had cut out the truth with surgical precision. Detective Laura Henley, one of the few Western consultants granted access to Russian high-security incidents, arrived before sunrise. She'd seen prison murders before, but something about Matrosskaya Tishina unsettled her. The air carried a strange weight, like the walls themselves were listening. The victim, guard Anton Klevich, had been known as the enforcer of silence. He was strict, even cruel, in applying the no-sound rule, often isolating detainees for the smallest infractions. Yet he had a spotless service record and no known enemies among the staff. But detainees? That was a different story. The main suspect, at least initially, was inmate Roman Volkov, a former cybercriminal with suspected ties to several European data breaches. He occupied cell 7B04, barely 5 meters from where the body was found. But there was a problem. Volkov was locked inside. The steel door showed no signs of tampering, and the time-stamped lock logs appeared clean. Still, when Lara looked into his eyes through the narrow observation window, she saw something. Not guilt, something colder. He whispered a single sentence, breaking the corridor's most sacred rule. "He wasn't supposed to search my cell tonight." The whisper earned him immediate isolation. The guards dragged him away, but Lara couldn't shake the sentence. Why not tonight? What did Klevich plan to search for? When she returned to the body, she noticed something everyone else had overlooked. Klevich's left hand had a faint smear of blue, almost invisible under poor lighting. Not ink. Not paint. Something thicker. A residue. She swabbed it and tucked the sample away, but as she did, she saw it. A slip of folded paper inside the guard's glove. A note. Tiny, almost crumpled flat, like it had been hidden under pressure. She opened it. 3 words, handwritten, sharp, hurried. "Ask cell 13. But there was no cell 13 in corridor 7B. Officially, the numbering skipped from 12 to 14, a common security practice to avoid superstition, according to the prison's records. Except Lara had toured the hallway twice. There was no empty slot. No boarded-up doorway. No space where a cell 13 could have been. So why would a dead guard warn her to ask someone who didn't exist? She ran her fingers along the cold corridor wall. Froze. A patch of stone colder than the rest. Almost hollow behind it. A hidden room. She stepped back as realization struck. If there was a cell 13, someone had erased it from the prison's layout. Someone with power. Before she could speak, another guard shouted from the end of the corridor. "Detective Henley, we found something behind the wall panel." She hurried over. The guard's hands shook as he pried the panel open. The cavity behind it was small, dusty, and silent. But inside it was a single object. A recorder. Still running. The time-stamp frozen at 2:10 a.m. Exactly 4 minutes before guard Klevich died. And whatever was on it was about to rewrite the entire case. The recorder felt heavier than it should have. Not physically, emotionally. Detective Laura Henley held it like a detonator, aware that pressing play might shatter whatever fragile truth the prison staff believed about that silent corridor. Guards gathered around her, tense, shifting nervously despite the strict rule against unnecessary noise. She hit play. At first, nothing. Just a low hum, the kind microphones pick up when a room is too quiet. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate. A key turning. A door creaking open. Lara's pulse tightened. Someone had accessed the hidden space. Then came the sound no one expected inside a corridor built on silence. A voice. Deep, unfamiliar, and speaking Russian with a calmness that didn't match the setting. Check his cell. Do not touch anything else. Another voice whispered back, they'll notice. They won't. Not if we move quickly. Then a third sound, something like a thud, followed by the scrape of boots. And suddenly a gasp. Tight, strangled. A struggle. A heartbeat later, the recording snapped to static. Lara stopped the playback. The guards stared at her pale. Someone had murdered Klevich inside the no-sound corridor, and it wasn't an inmate. It was staff. But who? And why would they risk everything in a place wired with cameras and pressure sensors? Later that day, Lara met with Warden Yegor Morozov inside his office. His walls were lined with outdated maps of the prison, each one showing cell blocks, ventilation routes, and emergency access points. But none displayed a cell 13. When Lara pressed him about it, he gave a smile too smooth to trust. Detective Henley, Matrosskaya Tishina, is old. Records have inconsistencies. You shouldn't chase ghosts. She set the recorder on his desk. You have staff moving in a room that doesn't exist on paper. A guard ended up dead. And this wasn't a ghost. His expression hardened, but only for a breath. Leave internal matters to us. You are here as an observer, not an investigator. Then why call me in at all? He didn't answer. She'd struck a nerve. And she didn't need to see his knuckles whiten to know she was now on her own. That night, she managed to retrieve the sample of blue residue from the forensic lab. The results were waiting, industrial-grade dye, typically used to mark items that shouldn't leave a controlled environment. The kind used on classified documents or restricted evidence. Meaning Klevich had gotten his hands on something he shouldn't have. Something someone wanted buried. She returned to Corridor 7B, moving silently under the dim blue security lights. The hidden panel was still open. Dust still settled in the cavity. But this time, she searched deeper. Behind the recorder, wedged into a crack in the stone, she found something else. A torn fragment of a laminated label. Faded but readable under her flashlight. Property of 13 Evidence Unit. Her breath caught. Cell 13 wasn't for detainees. It was for evidence. Unregistered, unlogged, concealed. But what evidence needed to be hidden behind a wall, past a corridor where silence was enforced like law? Before she could answer, heavy footsteps approached. She snapped off the flashlight, stepping back into the shadows. 2 guards rounded the corner, speaking in hushed Russian, breaking the silence rule without hesitation. Morozov said she's been asking too many questions. Then he wants her gone. We'll handle it. Lara felt the cold of the concrete seep through her jacket. They were hunting her. Inside a prison. Inside a corridor where no one could yell for help. She waited until their steps faded, then slipped away. Her only safe place left was the isolation wing, where Roman Volkov had been taken. She needed answers, and Volkov was the only one who had risked speaking to her. When she reached his isolation cell, she froze. The door was ajar. Inside, the small room was untouched, except for the bed, where Roman sat calmly, hands folded. I knew you'd come, he said softly. You said Klevich wasn't supposed to search your cell. Why? Volkov looked up, eyes hollow with a truth she wasn't ready for. Because what he was looking for was taken from me. And hidden somewhere they thought no one would find. What was it? He leaned closer. The only evidence that can expose the operation running inside this prison. And if you're hearing my voice now, detective, it means they're coming for you too. Suddenly, alarms blared, loud, violent, breaking the sacred silence. Volkov stood, backing away. You need to run. Why? Because they think you found what they lost. The darkness swallowed everything. No footsteps, no voices, no warnings, just the sharp, metallic buzz of the emergency lights struggling to come alive. For a moment, Detective Lara Henley couldn't tell where the walls were or where the dangers stood waiting. Then the red backup lights flickered on, painting the corridor in pulsing crimson. Roman Volkov was gone. His isolation cell door swung gently like something invisible had slipped through it. Lara drew in a slow breath and pressed her back to the wall. Every instinct screamed that the alarms weren't for an inmate escape. They were for her. The no-sound corridor was no longer silent. Distant boots hammered the concrete. Guards shouted orders. Keys rattled. Something heavy slammed. Whoever had been hiding behind the shadows of cell 13 wasn't hiding anymore. They were clearing the corridor, sealing exits, locking her inside a funnel. She had one path left, the maintenance access behind the isolation wing. Lara sprinted, her heartbeat syncing with the blaring alarm. She pushed through the narrow steel door and descended a metal staircase that spiraled into the lower levels of Matrosskaya Tishina. The air grew stale, colder. Pipes hissed overhead. Somewhere deep below, machinery rumbled like a mechanical heartbeat. Then she heard it, a voice echoing from the stairwell above. "Henley, stop. You don't know what you're doing." It wasn't a guard. It was Warden Morozov. Lara didn't slow. At the bottom of the stairs, she found another corridor, old, unlit, untouched by the renovations that kept the upper prison pristine. Her flashlight swept across decaying pipes, rusted doors, and thick dust on the floor. And then she saw it. A door marked simply C13. Her pulse snapped tight. She pressed her ear to the metal. Silence, not the enforced kind, but the kind that hides secrets. She pushed the door open. Inside was a long room illuminated by a single flickering bulb. Metal shelves lined the walls, filled with boxes stamped with international police insignias, Interpol, Europol, federal cases. Files. Hard drives. Photographs. Unregistered evidence from cases spanning across continents. At the center of the room sat a steel table, and on it lay a folder labeled Volkov, primary asset. Asset. Not inmate. She opened the folder. It hit her like a punch. Roman Volkov wasn't just a cybercriminal. He had been a covert informant tied to a multinational investigation targeting a smuggling network operating from inside the prison itself. Klevich must have discovered a piece of missing evidence, something crucial, and paid the price for it. Then she saw the last page. A transfer order. Signed by Morozov. Roman Volkov. Termination recommended. Immediate disposal. Lara felt cold spread through her chest. They hadn't moved Volkov to isolation for punishment. They moved him to prepare him for elimination. Then footsteps thundered outside the door. She grabbed the folder, slipped behind a tall shelving unit, and held her breath. The door burst open. Morozov entered with 2 armed guards. "Find her. She cannot leave with anything." The guards fanned out, searching. Lara stepped quietly backward, inching toward a secondary exit she had spotted, a maintenance hatch half hidden behind stacked crates. She dropped to a crouch, yanked it open, and crawled inside. She shut it just as Morozov's flashlight beam swept past. The narrow tunnel led her toward a rusted ladder. She climbed upward, pushing into a service room near the prison's administrative wing. Once there, she dialed the only number that could help her, an Interpol contact who trusted her more than he feared political backlash. When he answered, her voice shook. "I have proof that Matrosskaya Tishina is running a black site evidence unit. They killed a guard. Volkov is next. I need extraction." Silence. Then, "Get outside. A team is already on the way." She slipped through the service corridors, keeping her head low. Every turn felt like walking a tightrope over a pit. Finally, she reached the outer yard, where cold night air slapped her face. She ran toward the perimeter gate. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Roman Volkov. His hands were scraped, his lip bleeding. "Detective, you found it?" She nodded. "And we're getting out." Before he could answer, floodlights blasted the yard. Guards appeared on the perimeter walls. Morozov's voice thundered over the loudspeaker. Henley, drop the folder and step away from the inmate. Roman grabbed her arm. Don't stop. But everything froze when a convoy of black SUVs tore through the outer checkpoint, headlights blinding. Armed international officers flooded the yard, shouting commands. Guards dropped their weapons as Interpol swarmed the area. Morozov tried to flee but was tackled before he made it 5 steps. Lara exhaled for the first time in hours. Roman looked at her, tired, grateful, but carrying a truth far heavier than any evidence folder. You saved me, he said quietly. You saved yourself, she replied. That might have been the end. But 1 month later, in a secure European safe house, Roman Volkov disappeared without a trace. His door left wide open. No signs of a struggle. No footprints. Nothing missing, except a single USB drive. The same industrial blue dye found on Klevich's hand was smeared across the desk. Authorities still don't know whether Roman ran, or whether someone finally finished the job. And the no-sound corridor? They rebuilt it, reinforced it, and officially denied everything. If you thought this case was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.